Alright, hello and welcome in everyone. Normally on Friday we go over all of the headlines coming out of the NFC North from this previous week, but because today is Saturday, you're going to be enjoying a NFL Draft preview edition of Weekly North News. Alright, hello and welcome in everyone once again. This is part 2 of our two-part series previewing the NFL Draft for the NFC North Division. If you missed part 1, click through to the channel once this video is over. Access the Weekly North News playlist. You'll be able to find that video uploaded prior to this one once I get everything situated and done. And then everything that we talk about here will make sense, because in the first part of this two-part series, we discussed the NFC North teams, what their draft capital is, what their team needs are, what we could likely see happen, play out on the first round, what we could see happen on day 2, so on and so forth. So we can have that discussion once again if you visit the playlist and find that video. For today, we're going to do what we talked about. I'm going to share with you the mock draft that I have done for the NFC North Division. This is kind of a twist on a traditional mock draft, where instead of I'm doing the entire first round or I'm doing one team for 7 rounds, I'm going to do 4 teams for 7 rounds. And the caveat is that they're all in the same division. So this is an NFC North 7-round mock draft where I control all 4 teams using the PFF draft simulator. I know people are probably tired of that, but it's the one that I find most aesthetically pleasing. So it's the one that I continue to use, even though their algorithms are a little janky at the moment. And well, I mean, let's be honest, they've been janky for months. But anyway, without further ado, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you each mock draft as it was the final result, and just sort of explain myself in the picks that I made. Preface, just a couple things to note. I decided not to make any trades, just to, sort of keep some level of sanity throughout this project. I don't want to have to try to keep track of all of this stuff, even though the simulator does that for you. But there's a method to the madness, and I decided, you know what, let's just go ahead and nix trades. Let's do this in a traditional format. Second thing to note is that I was trying to be exceedingly fair. I'm not trying to screw over any of these teams just because they're division rivals and their fan bases don't like each other. I legitimately tried to do the best that I could. So if you are a fan of one of the teams that is not the Vikings, or even if you're a fan of the Vikings and you felt I did you wrong, please let me know. We can always have that discussion in the comments section below. So we're going to start with the Detroit Lions as the first team that we're going to showcase their mock draft, since they have the earliest pick in the first round, and then we'll go in descending order. Vikings will be second, Bears will be third, Packers will be last. So the Detroit Lions, here are the results for their mock draft that I conducted controlling them. And once again, we did discuss in the first video of this two-part series that the Detroit Lions make a lot of sense as a trade-down candidate in the top 10 because they don't have a lot of draft picks. Their draft event is going to be over rather early, so it would make sense to trade down. But even in this scenario, where Jamar Chase falls to me at number 7 overall, I can't pass that up. That is just too good of a bargain for me, in my opinion, because he's wide receiver 1 on my board. I have him ranked higher than the 2 Alabama wide receivers and just about everyone else. And I think most people do. That's not really a hot take. But to get him at number 7 is just, sign me up. I will sprint to the podium and deliver this card, because yes, they did sign some free agent wide receivers. Tyrell Williams comes to mind. That's not going to do anything for Jared Goff. Jared Goff is going to need some legitimate playmakers like he had in Los Angeles with the Rams. I think if you're bringing in Jared Goff and you're trying to figure out what he is and what you have, and can you go forward with him as a franchise quarterback, Jamar Chase will be able to answer a lot of those questions. And I think especially with T.J. Hawkinson still on the roster, since he's a really dangerous pass-catching threat out of the tight end position, this will give Jared Goff the help that he needs to sort of figure out where he is in terms of his development, and can he maintain his status as a starting quarterback in the NFL. So I love the Jamar Chase pick at 7 overall. I wouldn't trade down if this is how the board felt to me. Moving on to the second round, Jamin Davis, a linebacker from Kentucky. At 41 overall, this pick feels a little bit early, and that's only because I decided to jump the gun. He's available, much later on in most simulators, but the rumors that I'm hearing around the internet are that he's not going to be that available that late. So I decided to jump on it, get a really good linebacker off the board for this Dan Campbell defense. In round 3, sticking with the defense, Eric Stokes, great corner out of Georgia. Love a lot of the prospects coming out of Georgia this year, even his teammate at the same position, Tyson Campbell. Also got really lucky with Jamar Johnson at the end of the 3rd round, pick 101. The safety from Indiana falls to me, which I had to stop that. I had to stop that slide. So get a great player at a great position late in the 3rd. Milton Williams in round 4 at pick 112. The Louisiana Tech defensive tackle. His name's probably going to be called a lot earlier than this, but excited to get him for the interior of the defense. In round 5, we get Josh Palmer as our final draft pick at pick 153. Remember what we said, very early ending to the draft event for the Detroit Lions if they do not trade down and acquire more picks. But Josh Palmer, wide receiver from Tennessee, feels like a really good addition to an already pretty good wide receiver room with the addition of Jamar Chase now and Josh Palmer. I think this gives Jared Goff the help that he's going to need to be able to be successful in his new environment. So that is why I did what I did there with Josh Palmer. So that is the draft for the Detroit Lions. Let me know what you think. And we're going to move on to the Minnesota Vikings, and we've discussed this a lot on this channel. I've done several 7-round mock drafts for you, but this one's a little bit different. And it's a little bit different because I believe it's the first one where I haven't done any trades. So no trades with Minnesota Vikings, 14 overall. The board, once again, is very generous, and we get Rashawn Slater, the offensive tackle out of Northwestern. I believe that this is the dream scenario, if you will, to get one of the top 2 offensive tackles. A lot of people have Rashawn Slater even rated a little bit higher than Penei Sewell, which is surprising in my opinion, but that's, you know, what's going to happen when you have all this time to kill between the end of the season and the NFL draft itself. So we get Rashawn Slater, we get our brand new starting offensive tackle at the left tackle position. Couldn't be happier with that result. Don't have a pick in round 2, so we move on to round 3 where we pick up Cameron Sample, the edge rusher from Tulane. I don't believe Stephen Weatherly is cut out to be an every down starter, so I'm hoping that Sample, while he may not be either, I at least have a bunch of options to send into preseason, to send into training camp, and to tell these guys, hey, there is a battle for a starting position opposite of Danielle Hunter. Go win that battle. And I think Cameron Sample is definitely a guy who could throw his weight around in that battle for that starting job. A few picks later, pick 90, Kendrick Green, the guard from Illinois. This is a pick that I've made a lot. It's either him or Ben Cleveland at this spot. Kendrick Green is a very underrated guard coming out of Illinois. He wasn't even in my top 10 interior offensive line prospects video because the board that I was actually using as a cheat sheet didn't even have him listed, so which I thought was the strangest thing. So I think there are some analysts out there that are kind of sleeping on this guy. So I didn't want to be one of those people, and I got him to solidify the guard position, so we are not starting Dakota Dozier this year, which nobody wants. Moving on to the 4th round, where the Vikings have 3 picks, I decided to take a stab at wide receiver 3, get Cade Johnson, South Dakota State wide receiver. Not a guy who's flying under the radar, but I guess you could call it like just above the radar, like just like that sort of gray area where you're on and off, on and off. I think this guy could be a very formidable addition to the wide receiver group and definitely supplant Chad Beebe and BC Johnson as the wide receiver 3 behind Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Really love his production. Stone Forsythe going back to the trenches, getting an offensive tackle out of Florida with the next pick. Benjamin St. Juste is a corner who I think is definitely going to be drafted higher than this. He's definitely going to be a day 2 guy, but he's got that length that I think is a benefit to the cornerback room that we have. And I'm also still worried about Jeff Gladney. I have heard no updates about that situation. So there is a potential scenario that exists where Jeff Gladney's not on the team or he's not available to play. We need some cornerback depth. And then at the end of the 4th round, we've got Monty Rice, the linebacker from Georgia. Figured why the hell not, get some competition for Troy Dye and whatever linebacker might be fighting to take over for Eric Wilson, who departed. Round 5, we get Tyree Gillespie. He's not the best safety in the world, but he's a battle-tested safety. He's gone up against a lot of very prominent teams, both in the SEC and the ACC. And then in round 6, where we have our final pick, I went with Ramondre Stevenson, the running back from Oklahoma, who is a running back that I haven't really watched a whole lot of up until now, but I figured we get another guy to come in to replace, help replace Mike Boone, who has departed for Denver. So that is the Vikings 7-round mock draft for this NFC North mock draft special. Now we're going to move on to the Chicago Bears. This one was a little bit more difficult, but still very interesting result here. We start off in the first round with Rashad Bateman at 20 overall, wide receiver from Minnesota. I feel like they need an ex wide receiver of the future. I have stuff falling around, falling down around me. They need an ex wide receiver of the future. Allen Robinson's probably not going to stay very long. They're trying to trade Anthony Miller. He's probably not going to be on this team when the season starts. So I figured getting a surefire wide receiver that is capable of making a lot of physical plays early on was priority number one after all of the quarterbacks were gone. So disclaimer, I was trying to get a quarterback to develop in the first round, but Mac Jones, Trey Lance, not available. Had to wait on a quarterback. Didn't have to wait long. Round two, with the 52nd pick, we go for Davis Mills. It was either going to be him or Kellen Mond. I went with Davis Mills just because I haven't really had an opportunity to talk about him a whole bunch. Not one of my favorite quarterbacks coming out of this class. Probably the least athletic, I would say, if you could put it that way. I would have preferred Kyle Trask at this spot, but obviously not available. In round three, we have one pick, and that's Kelvin Joseph, cornerback from Kentucky. Figured we need some depth after the loss of Kyle Fuller. In round four, we don't have any picks for the Bears, so we moved to round five, where they have pick 164, Aaron Banks from Notre Dame, solidify the offensive line. Round six, we have a bunch of picks. If you are a Chicago Bears fan, pay attention to round six. Take some flyers in defense with Sean Davis, safety from Florida, Ernest Jones, linebacker from South Carolina. Really like the Jalen Moore pick, offensive tackle from Western Michigan. I think he could be a diamond in the rough. And then we wrap it up with Austin Watkins, the wide receiver from UAB. Full disclosure, fat finger pick. I accidentally clicked select on him. So it wasn't intentional, but I'm not upset about it. Austin Watkins is a good player, good wide receiver. And since we've already talked about what's probably going to happen to the Bears at the wide receiver position, it doesn't hurt to get some more depth, especially at the end of the draft. Don't have a round 7 pick, so that ends it for the Chicago Bears. And then finally, we have the Green Bay Packers, who have a ton of picks, and they're the only team in the NFC North that picks all the way to round 7. Starting things off, Greg Newsome is on the board at 29 overall. I feel like I can't really pass that up. Greg Newsome's one of my favorite corners in this class. Round 2, I grab Elijah Moore. Finally get a really good wide receiver. He can play inside. You'll have Devontae Adams Adam Lazard on the outside. Put Elijah Moore inside. He can play the interior really well. You could probably move outside. There's an argument to be made for that, but Elijah Moore at 62 feels pretty good. Then we have pick 92, went linebacker with Pete Werner. Figured we help out the defense in round 3, excuse me. In round 4, Green Bay has a couple of picks. Went with Robert Hainsey and Tommy Tremble. Figured I'd dip into the Notre Dame pool. Also notice I kind of really rated the Big Ten covered with this Packers 7-round draft, if that isn't obvious. And that wasn't intentional. That just sort of happened. Tommy Tremble is a tight end who I think is probably sneakily going to be the third tight end off the board. If Pat Freiermuth is tight end too, I think he's leapfrogged Brevin Jordan in these in this closing stretch leading up to the draft. So that's a nice pick. In round 5, double up on the linebacker position, get Derek Barnes from Purdue and Jonathan Cooper, another edge rusher from Ohio State. Once again, rating the Big Ten covered. In round 6, we have one pick, Drew Dahlman, center from Stanford. Once again, solidifying the interior offensive line, especially after they let Lindsey go. And then after that, Christian Uphoff the safety from Illinois State, as somebody who is sort of in the area of the Mahoning Valley Football Conference and has a team that is in that. Familiar with Illinois State, this is a great athlete. You're getting a very productive player in Uphoff here from the Redbirds. And then once again, Packers are the only team with a round 7 pick, so they will grab Mark Gilbert, cornerback from Duke. I felt pretty good about this draft. I felt pretty good about all of the drafts, really, that I did for this team. This was an interesting experiment. Never done a 4-team, 7-round mock draft for, but it fits the bill for the NFC North. Let me know what you think of the results. PFF liked this. They liked the drafts that I did. They gave me very high scores for most of the picks, and they gave me high scores for the final result of all the drafts. So let me know what you think. Do you agree with them? Was there some players that I missed, some players that you do like? And we will have a discussion, as always, in the comments below. Once again, no weekly North News episode next week because it is the NFL Draft. We will return with this series after that. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.